introduction of the Buenos Aires studio. Now we are here with Gustavo Paiva. Gustavo, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Hello, my camera isn't activating, it's just that. But yeah, I can introduce myself. So, hello everyone, my name is Gustavo Paiva. I'm from Brazil, and I am a veteran youth. I'm 26 years old as of this year, and now I'm no longer a youth by Brazilian standards, but I've been in a youth program from Brazil for quite a while now. I graduated, I am a law major, and this year, as of 2016, I am involved with the Brazilian IGF. I am the vice coordinator for the local team. That is, the IGF, the Brazilian IGF, was supposed to happen in a city in the Northeast, and I was the vice coordinator for the local team. So that is my involvement with internet governance as of this year. So should we start?
Yes, please.
Okay, so right now we have 3 participants here on the Zoom room, plus a few more speakers. So while everyone's coming in, I'm going to explain what we're going to do. So earlier this week, I was invited to speak here, and I thought, okay, this is an interesting opportunity. I didn't have back then a complete, well-constructed presentation for this. So I thought, let's take this and make it into an opportunity. Let's try and make something which is, as the IGF would suggest, let's make something that is participative, that allows the audience to, instead of me just speaking to you for an hour, which would be perhaps more enriching in other circumstances, for this one, let's try and make something bottom up all the way through. So I created this document, which is linked on the chat room. You can just click on this link, or you can just watch from the stream. It's okay. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask 4 questions today. They are simple questions, and they relate to your experience as a youth with online education during the COVID pandemic. These questions, they do not require of you to have extensive study on how online education works or how it's supposed to be. No, we are going to try and map the situation of online education among us. We're trying to collect testimonials. We are trying to construct a narrative in a way. And you can be a 17-year-old who just learned about internet governance. You are welcome here. You can be a veteran with multiple IGFs under your belt. You are welcome here. And you just have a space to tell us your experience. Now, if you are shy, you can just go to the document and answer the questions yourself. That would be great. If you want to speak, if you want to discuss, we'll have time for that. So I think we'll be able to allocate a number of forms of participation here. Now, I'm just talking here because we don't have too many participants as of right now. So let's wait for people to join. And while that is still happening, I'm going to make a brief introduction on the topic of online education. So I'm going to tell a little story. This happened here in my city. My city is Natal. And I know this is also the reality of many other places in Brazil, in Latin America, and in the world. So this will be very generic because it's so prevalent. Let's say you're a student from a private school. You are from a middle class or middle upper class family. You have broadband connection in your home. Your high school, your school they have a team of well-paid teachers, or reasonably well-paid, we should say. And COVID pandemic hit, and these schools, they might have been able to quickly transition to an online education model. Now, well, you are taken care of, we should say. Online education is hard for everyone. It's very difficult to keep focus, but you know, as comparing to all the things that could happen, work not too badly. This is not the case for a number of students from public schools, and even some students from private schools, I should say. Not everyone, for instance, has broadband connection. They might not have stable broadband connection, or they might have connection, but they don't have a dedicated computer to them. So a very common reality in low-income neighborhoods here is that there will be no desktop computer, there will be no laptop. The family relies on a smartphone. Yes, a smartphone. And it's probably shared between a number of people from this family. So that is not ideal when this person, this adult might have to work. He might be an essential worker in this situation, and the child doesn't have a computer at home to be able to study. Another thing that can happen is maybe they don't have electricity. That is also possible. Some families, they would often rely on community networks or on a library, a public space that had connection. And you know, now all of this is no longer a possibility in the COVID pandemic. So what we see is that these patterns of inequality, they keep reproducing themselves. And these people who didn't have access to the internet, now they don't have access to education. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and map this out among us, among ourselves. This was my brief introduction. So now let's take a look at the questions. First one is we will try to build a narrative. Let's map the Latin American experience with online education during times of crisis. Tell us where you're from and construct your community story with online learning. Now, again, this is what I said, you don't need to be a specialist. You can be a newcomer here with internet governance, and you're welcome to tell us your story. You can construct it however you please. We will have a chance for you to speak, to take on the floor, or if you're shy, you can just go to the document and write it out. The second question is, now that we have this collection of experiences, let's identify what were the obstacles and barriers. What, if anything, stops students from having access to education? So I already said a few examples. So, what if you don't have electricity? What if you don't have hardware? But there can be other things too. And that's what we're trying to discuss. You can just, again, go and write your answer. The third question. Now this one is a little bit more complicated. Now let's take a look at a different kind of obstacle. What was an obstacle for quality of education? This is an open-ended question. So again, feel free to structure it however you see fit. We don't have to fit your reality to the question. You can just construct it and put it here. If you're having a difficulty framing this question, we have a few others that sub-questions. So for example, how was teaching methodology inadequate? Were the online tools, such as the platforms like Zoom or whatever, were they inadequate? Or did politics get in the way? That is also a possibility. The final question is just messages. Summarizing everything, we will look back and what are the messages that you would like to deliver on the topic of online education. So it's a very simple thing. You don't need to be a specialist. This was designed to be welcoming. So now let's start with the first question. So I already see that Lucas, he wants to speak. Excellent. If anyone wants to speak, just raise your hand. There's a little button for this. And Lucas, you can start. Let's tell him to activate. I think your sound should be functioning now, Lucas.
Okay, hi. I prefer to speak rather than to write. Mm-hmm. But my experience, I'm also 26 years old. I'm not, in the Brazilian definition, a youngster. But in terms of the first question, which is a narrative of online education, I could say that I've experienced kind of in two ways. I coordinate a study group on constitutional law at the Federal University that I'm affiliated to in Curitiba. And we received a lot of students in their first, second years that simply didn't have computers, didn't have the infrastructure to, start online education. And this was particularly sensitive because it's a federal university, but well, in the social reality of Brazil, a very elitist group of students get to go to a public university. So after, I think, 3 months during the pandemic, the university did kind of a collaborative thing where we could buy computers in order to donate them for students. And even still, I think it was a wonderful project, but well, the university itself didn't have any money for it. So us professors and, research assistants, we got to, spend our own money to buy this very cheap computers, at least so students could participate in our online classes, which happened basically in Microsoft Teams. This was a very different experience with online education than that I had with the youth LACIGF group. I did the course in order to prepare for this meeting and for the LACIGF meeting during the week. And well, we had a completely different system. We had the Moodle, we had the discussion forum. So as a student then, we could see that education had this other side, or this other methodology that was much more global, much more, let's say, comprehensive, using the tools of the internet in order to actually expand our education, not only to transmit video and audio, which is something that it's what we're doing at Federal University here in Paraná. So, well, this is my answer.
Thank you, Lucas. This was a very interesting one because, and I'm seeing we are getting more participants. This is very interesting. It's because as many of you probably have noticed with your own experiences, there are many ways of structuring an online course. So, there is of course the one directional one. It's a Zoom room with a teacher speaking to the students, but there are also other kinds of online learning, as the Moodle, and the Diplo Foundation has a whole different method. And this is interesting to me because as you're going to see later in one of the other questions, it also talks about quality. And I think that a lot of institutions were caught off guard, and they just tried to copy paste a previous model, and it might not have been as efficient, as productive as they would have hoped. So for those who have joined us, this is a collaborative session. We have a link to a Google Drive, Google Doc. You can join us on this doc, and we are on the first question. We are asking 4 questions, one by one. And for this, we are trying to map out narratives for online learning. So if you want to speak, you are welcome to do so. Just raise your hand. And Lucas, if possible, can you unraise your hand, lower your hand? And thank you. So if you're shy, you can just go straight to the document as well. That's also a possibility.
So share an example?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, this is an example that it worries me a lot because in the city of Buenos Aires, so you have on one side the children that goes to public and private schools, but the thing is that the ones that go to the public school, not all of them have computers, not even they have the money to pay for internet connection on their homes. So at one point of the quarantine, very long one in Argentina, the government of Buenos Aires said, especially the Ministry of Education, of that city says, okay, but what about if we make that those children from the public schools can go to the public schools to have the classes because they have been left aside from the online education because they don't have access to a computer because it's very expensive to pay for internet and data. But then the governor of the city of Buenos Aires said, but no, we cannot have children at schools, it's dangerous and all that. But we see, okay, you have the problem of public health, but what's happening with those kids that are left outside? Because what are you going to make them, to pass to move to the next year, and they don't have their necessary knowledge that you need to know for that grade that you are having, so that's the problem that I see. That I think it's a similar problem that we are having in other cities in Latin America. Yeah.
So if I understood correctly, a proposal was for only the students who didn't have computers to go back to the local schools. Is that it?
Yes.
That is an interesting proposal. Yeah. I've heard quite a few complaints about the lockdown in Buenos Aires. So I am personally in favor of this idea, knowing what I know. I took note of it and I'm going to fill it out a bit. So does anyone want to, oh, Mariana is here too. I'm seeing a few familiar names. So the idea for this little collaborative session is you can go to the Google Doc and you can answer these questions. Right now we are trying to collect narratives for online education in Latin America. What has been your experience so far, and so on. You can just go straight to the document, or you can raise your hand and ask to speak. It's very informal here. So does anyone want to add anything? Or if not, we can go to the next question. I'm going to give you guys a minute to think. Just setting up my timer. Oh, Aline raised her hand. Aline, you can speak now if you unmute yourself.
Hi, do you listen?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm from Salvador, Bahia, and I take part of a project called Permanecer, or Remain, I don't know. And we try to help students from public schools to study to ENEM, the exam to get into the universities. And we have many difficulties because the students don't have good internet, not even notebooks, computers. They badly can see a video. So we try to use a lot the WhatsApp to give some materials as slides, essays, reviews. And sometimes we give classes on Zoom. But we have many difficulties because they don't have good internet. Sometimes they get internet from their neighbors, and but we are still trying.
So, Aline, the name of the project is Permanecer?
Yes.
Yeah, and you were distributing material via WhatsApp?
Yes, we have groups.
That is very ingenious, very, very smart.
Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know, so in some data plans in Brazil, they have 0 rating for WhatsApp, so it doesn't consume phone data, which means that watching a video on YouTube or watching a class on Zoom, it would take a lot of megabytes from your data plan, but through WhatsApp, that is not an issue. That is very smart. You are using the system very well. So does anyone else have anything to add? Aline, if you want to add something, that's also okay. If not, we are going to the next question.
That's okay.
I was thinking, sorry, it's a very short input. I was thinking because it's not only a problem for educators, it's also a problem for parents, because parents, well, they should like take this new role of being teaching their kids, and maybe they don't have all the expertise of an educator who's study a career on education and so, and also thinking of the amount of time that educators should be online, because um, in most cases you see that they are logged in since 7 a.m. and after they have all the classes and review all the contents, maybe it is like 11 p.m. at night. So they are like the whole day spending time on this. That
I'm
was an
taking
input.
note. Okay. Seeing as we don't have Alina, if possible, can you lower your hand? And we are going to the next question. That's second one. It's about barriers to access. So we have a few narratives. That is a start. Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify which barriers to access you guys witnessed. So some people, as we said, they don't have access to computers. Others, they don't have access to connectivity. Others might not have electricity. This was a new one that I heard today. And also policy can be an issue. Maybe politics can be an issue that stops people from having access to education. So right now we are trying to identify this. Again, you're welcome to raise your hand, or you can just go straight to the document. Seeing as we already discussed a little bit of this on the first one, this one might be quicker. So let's see. So does anyone want to start? Lucas, let's see. Great.
Hi. So just following from the first question, we received barriers in terms of hardware, of course, because many students simply didn't have a computer or couldn't even the platform, because the Federal University of Paraná uses Microsoft Teams, which is a very specific platform for the access to classes and to conference meetings. So hardware and software were a problem, and I haven't seen anyone complain about energy or electricity in terms of connectivity per se, but I did hear reports on the enlargement, let's say, of the bills of electricity because people were just staying more at home. And there was also a policy issue because Federal University of Paraná, we tried to establish the program to give computers or buy computers or even set up a donation system, but there was simply no funding whatsoever from the university, from the federal government, or even from the state government. So it was basically down to private donations from benefactors, that's what we call them, of the university, which were professors, some in my case, because I worked in the School of Law, we did manage to get a bunch of judges and public prosecutors to contribute as well. We did this awakening kind of thing in our social community, in our small community. But this was not true for other schools such as agriculture or business school and other courses.
Noted. Not all schools manage to get funding. Okay, thank you. Let's see, does anyone else want to add something? Okay, seems like not. Let's see if there's nothing on the chat. Go on.
Well, basically how to use these digital tools. because to be honest, I think in none of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, the government thought, okay, we should be ready by the time the educators should be giving the classes online. It was all improvised. There was no structure. Even the teachers, they should buy themselves the computers or buy a cell phone or whatever. There was no support at all. Or at least that's how I see it.
I think that is the case. I think that is objectively, that is verifiable, and I would bet on that. What I saw myself was that because of political, diplomatic issues, the countries were very late to responding to COVID. Even if there were a few rumors, a few signs of that COVID would be such a big issue, even in January, governments were in a state of very strong denial. So, and again, the political response was very late. And in a few countries, it was even now the political response is late in a way because of politics, really. And I think that had a dripping effect in its lower institutions in the hierarchy. That many schools, they were blindsided by this. They did not believe COVID would become such an issue, or they were in pure denial. I think that is objectively the truth. Actually, I got a few flashbacks when this was all starting, because in the Brazilian political debate, some people were so adamantly, vehemently against online education. They saw online education as a cheapened version of of on-site education. It was a bad option that ultimately would repeat patterns of inequality. And I wasn't in favor of that position. I was actually the opposite. I thought, yes, it's a scalable solution it is a scalable solution that on scale is somewhat cheap. It's cheapened, but it isn't easy. Doing an online course isn't easy, and neither is it cheap when you look at a single course, but it's scalable. And my perspective was, no, this will enable us to combat existing patterns of inequality. And what we're seeing is that, hey, if our institutions were ready, if they were prepared to make this transition earlier, if the debate on online education had advanced more quickly in the previous years, we would be performing at a better capacity now today. So, seeing as, let's see if there are any raised hands. Let's see. Lucas already spoke. If possible, lower your hand unless you want to speak again.
Yeah, no, I just want to add something to what Eileen remarked. Is that it's interesting that we see this this improvision both in public schools as well as in private schools. I think I have smaller sisters, and they all go to private schools. And when the pandemic started, even with all the infrastructure of a private establishment, the majority of the professors were not ready to give their lectures online. And some schools in Curitiba and in São Paulo as well even asked the professors to go to the school to pre-record classes, which I think is absurd, because then what is the purpose? If you're going to the school, you're still in infringement of isolation practices. So if it's a problem in the private sector, imagine in the public sector is obviously much worse. So I just wanted to add this anecdote.
Very interesting. Naturally, public teachers were less prepared.
Thank you, Lucas. I totally remember now about the same situation in public universities, because, for example, the University of Buenos Aires is very big. The teachers didn't have Zoom links. For example, my sister is studying psychology, and the teacher said, okay, you're having the class in 40 minutes because that's what we can have as Zoom free, you know? So it's like, that's not the quality of education, to explain in 40 minutes and then deal with your homework, right? Also, sorry for jumping, Gustavo.
No, it's fine. So we are at halfway point of our little workshop. So let's go to the third question. We've seen now narratives, we've seen obstacles to access. Now we are going to talk about quality. So what was an obstacle for quality of education? This is a very open-ended question. You can feel free to structure this however you think it's best, however you see fit. But we have a few options, a few ideas for if you want to, if you need a hint. While no one is raising their hand, you can just, again, raise your hand. So was methodology an issue? How can it be improved? How can teachers in schools adapt? Were the tools, for example, if Lucas mentioned Microsoft Teams, if you can, I would like to know a bit more why Microsoft Teams in particular was not adequate, and so on. So again, Lucas, you have the word.
Okay, thank you. So focusing Microsoft Teams, why it was not adequate in the beginning? Well, we had to use the institutional email to get into Microsoft Teams. That was the first issue, because not all students of the course of the Federal University actually went to the IT section of the public university to collect their emails. So at the end, everybody wanted to, access Microsoft Teams, but they had to go first to the IT, which they should have done in the beginning of the year, and they haven't. So, the IT team was completely overloaded. So this was the first issue with Teams. The second issue with Teams is that it was much harder to include people from outside of the institution, for example, a guest speaker, into our group to, present something or to participate in our class or in our discussion. So this is the specific reason for Microsoft Teams being inadequate in the beginning of the pandemic. And concerning more methodology and quality of education, I think you already raised some interesting questions at the end of our debate on question 2. And I think that online education, in order to be of the same quality or of the same, to provide the same power and the same knowledge that, on-site education, it needs to have all of this new perspective and all of this new approach. So it's not just, transmitting audio and video through Zoom, but also establishing a group discussion, a forum discussion, and, some questions that could be debated through the week. That this is an example from the open course, but of course this is just an example, because I think that in education, deliberation and debate is of utmost importance. So it's not just, presenting, and the student must be just like a passive subject of knowledge. Knowledge must be constructed in every class. And this is more difficult in online meetings, especially if you consider like shy people. I am a shy person, so it's fairly easy just to, sit and listen to things instead of actually participating and open my mic or open my camera. And this is something that students do not do on Zoom presentations, but they are kind of forced to do if they are all together in a class. So I think this is the greater impact to quality of education, is the social aspect, is not the knowledge itself, but it's the way that it's transmitted.
Thank you. This is a very nice comment. I'm still taking notes of it. So does anyone want to add anything? Again, if you aren't comfortable speaking, you can just go straight to the document as well. So I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to think a bit. If not, then I'll talk a bit myself, and then we go to the next question. Eileen, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just thinking of your question of how can teachers and schools adapt. I'm thinking it's not only that, but also the government to, for example, put more networks. I mean, more installation of the networks, giving a sponsorship or something of the sort for those who cannot be connected, to have a plan to give computers for those who are in marginalized communities and cannot be connected, and also to think of a national strategy on create capacity building on digital tools. Yeah.
Thank you. Oops. So let's see if anyone also raised. Aline raised her hand, so you can speak, Aline.
I think my answer is related to the second one, and I believe something that happened here in Bahia was that the government said that it was impossible to afford online classes because teachers were not prepared, and the government said they have any structure to build an online system. And I think another issue is related to the lack of the quality of the internet. Students need internet of at least 5 megabytes to connect well, to watch videos, and it's something that I really see that we need to implement.
Thank you for the comment. I took note of it. So, okay, let's see so far how we are doing. I'm going to talk a bit about before we go to the next question. So the next question is youth messages. You pick a stakeholder group, the private sector, the government, civil society, whichever one you think you want to address it, and you'll be able to write one or more messages. But before we get to that, because we have some time left, there is I want to bring a Brazilian case. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, we have the ENEM. It's the standardized national exam. You need to go through the ENEM to go to university. And so, to put it bluntly, a high school student lives and breathes the ENEM, and the whole year, actually the whole high school period, 3 years, is spent just studying and studying and studying for the ENEM. And if it is very competitive, if you want to study medicine or law or engineering or any of these more sought after courses, it's your priority for 3 years of your life. And COVID kind of made everything really hard on that, because if you are from a private school, you can, it's not easy. It's not easy for anyone. But if you're from a private school, you manage to make a better transition from a well-paid, high-performance high school. Very few people fit that bill. Meanwhile, students from public schools, many of them had their education outright interrupted. It isn't happening. And so one of the big issues that Brazil also faced was, how are we going to manage the ENEM with this? Because, a number of students, they just had their chances of performing as well as would in the end they got destroyed. That is also a case where, you know, for smaller children, having a school year interrupted is a very harmful thing. It is harmful down to a biological level. There are stages of development. So there's a period of time when the child is learning and mastering the use of language. There's a period of time when they're learning and mastering social interactions. If there's a specific window for it. You can't just stretch the window yourself. This is the child's rhythm. It's their own speed. And this idea of basically imprisoning children inside their homes for 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, their biological clock is going. They're losing these windows of development, and some of these windows, they can't even be replicated with online education. It is just something which can only be done with on-site interaction with their peers. So that is a very difficult thing. We are going to witness the side effects of this for years to come. When it comes to the children, the five-year-olds who were who went through this, it will be very difficult. Okay, with that said, with this little diversion, now let's go back to the question. We have I think 20 more minutes, 18 more minutes. So now everyone, you can pick a stakeholder group, or a specific institution if you want, and you can tell them your message. What do we want as the youth? What does the youth want? What are our warnings? You can again structure this however you please. So I see that Lucas has his hand raised. I don't know if it's from before or if he wants to add something now.
It was from before. I'm still thinking. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. So while you guys are thinking, this was inspired in great part by the methodology that was employed in the youth forum from the previous year's IGF. So for those of you who didn't participate in it, there was this institution from Germany. I forget the name. Something Adenauer Institute maybe, but there was the youth forum, and they did this youth summit. Yes, German Informatics Society. Thank you. They employed this very interesting methodology. Now, just so you guys have a little bit of a context, they were in a very tight situation. They were called to do this at a very tight deadline. What they did was they organized a few workshops, a few sessions. They would get a high-level specialist to give a brief speech about an issue, and then for the half of the time, the youth, the youngsters, as someone mentioned, and this year they are doing the Youth for Digital Sustainability program. So then we would have a time to write messages ourselves. That was extremely productive. The deadline for this workshop was even tighter, but still, I think we are doing good progress. So for this stage of the workshop, you guys can frame this as, you can frame it however you want. It can begin with, what do we want? We, the youth, we want this, this, and that. We want to inform you that this, and that. So let me take a look at what we have produced so far. We have the narratives. So, for example, Lucas said, there was an university project on buying computers, but there were problems with funding. So also shared experience on the open course. So, that is a thing, university, academia, you need to consider the acquisition of hardware for low-income students. What we are seeing here is that this issue, everything we've discussed, it is so inherently tied with low-income students. This is for a few issues. Income plays a role in the sense that if you're from a high income family, this doesn't affect you as much. For this issue we are discussing, some of these issues do not affect you at all if you are from a high income family. Some of them do. I think that we didn't get to discuss this too much, but I think that for everyone, this, I speak for me, but I know I've heard this from others, this experience with online education has showed that performance is very low. The quality of education is, even with a team of professors that went through capacity building, even for them, performance can be very low. Maybe because of factors beyond their control. I know that not being able to get out to, enjoy a day outside, to do some exercise, it really tanked my performance. And I know it did for others as well. So let's see. We have 9. Lucas, your hand is raised again.
Yes. So I was trying to think of something beyond the government, because obviously the government has the state action, so they can implement the type of differences that we want. But at the same time, I think we need, considering multi-stakeholderism, we need to think of other perspectives. In terms of academia, I think in civil society, I think it's important for professors, and not only academic professors, but high school professors as well, to really engage in a meaningful or a differentiated perspective of education that accommodates online, or that it's built explicitly for online education. So not only taking their on-site classes and presenting on Zoom. I'm not saying that this is going to be easy, but I think that is something that needs to happen. I think that professors need to learn the extensive ways in which technology can assist them. So this would be a message to civil society / academia. In the governmental level, I think that it really needs to be appreciated how much inequality affects not only society but education, and this is something that Eileen has already summarized in a sentence. But well, in Brazil, education is a constitutional right, and it's been denied, effectively denied nowadays. Not only in the public school university, but also in most, especially in the fundamental or high school level. So yeah, so these two stakeholders, I would try to summarize these ideas of our findings here today.
Very good, thank you, Lucas. Let's see. So we have a few other people here. No one's raising their hand. We are close to. We have 11 more minutes. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a few more minutes to think and write your comments if you want to. So for those of us who, I think someone joined us right about now, we are writing youth messages about online education. We have this Google Doc link you can just click, and you go to the document, to the last page, youth messages, and we have the chance to write youth messages to stakeholder groups saying what we want, what do we think about the issue of online education. You don't have to be shy. You are a very welcoming bunch here. And I'm going to give you guys, let's say 4 minutes. Yeah, 4 minutes should be good. So, everyone can think.
I had one more idea, actually. For the technical community, I think we could try to establish like an open access conference platform like Zoom, for example. I mean, Zoom has, you know, a free capability, but it's limited to 45-minute conferences. So wouldn't it be great if we had like a platform, and this could be even like in the private sector. I don't know if advertisement or data exploration, I don't know if even if that's good, but perhaps we could, you know, create a truly democratic platform for conferences and lectures and meetings in terms of education, at least, or focus for education.
Open source options. Yep. I think there are a few actually. I know at least one, but even having the open source option, that's still, you know, you still need a little experience to actually apply it and keep it running. But I think it is necessary, absolutely. So let's see, anyone else wants to add something? Okay, I'm still leaving it open for 2 more minutes and then we're closing off.
I think we should also mention about the, if we want to think of youth as a different stakeholder, to see like an independent stakeholder, more diverse from the others, but to see how we can build this narrative of having better online education quality. So I'm thinking, for instance, this exercise of building these messages could be more something more like can have more weight, you know. The same as so civil society makes their recommendations to government, something like the same level from the youth to the governments, which is what we have been trying to achieve at the YouthLACIGF Summit last year, and this year that I mentioned on the chat about the Youth for Digital Sustainability, which I'm part of that group. So I think it's a very good exercise and we should be implemented more frequently to draft these recommendations on policy making.
That is an interesting one. How it would be possible to repeat this experiment, but in a more robust form. It would be doable. Just would have to, you know, involve the logistics of bringing people together in a specific date and so on. But I do think this could be a very interesting policy. It could generate a very interesting policy recommendation. Well, that's it. We have 6 more minutes before we close it off. So everyone, this was this whole experiment today was in large part inspired by the Youth Summit from last year from the German Informatics Society. I know many of you didn't have the opportunity, but it was a very enriching experience. I personally, for those of you who have gone a few times to other governance events, these workshops, they might not be as participative as this, but if you go back to the Net Mundial Declaration, one of the principles that it proposes is that it should be participative. It should be bottom up. It should be quick. It should be agile. It should be participative. And so this was an attempt at giving you guys the opportunity to construct your policy recommendations, construct your narratives to make an impact, to make a lasting result by yourselves without me having to speak for you. I think that we as a community of internet governance, not only as youth, also as youth, but as actors engaged in internet governance, we stand to benefit from these more participative models. And hopefully, you know, you will take this as a memory, and I'm going to take a look at the document after this is all done. Let's see how we can polish it up and maybe make something lasting for all of us. So again, it was it was a very nice opportunity, and I hope you had fun. I hope it was as enriching to you as it was for me. Does anyone want to add something to close it off?
I just want to thank you for this presentation, for the information, and for the organization of this bottom-up process. So it was really great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm seeing that, pardon me for not knowing how to pronounce your name, but I think it's Koreb. I'm allowing you to speak. You can unmute yourself. So I think you can speak now. Your microphone is enabled. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry for that. Sorry if you had any issue. If Koreb manages to fix his microphone, we still have a few minutes, so you would be welcome to speak. Does anyone else want? Hello. Oh well. Well, I think this is it then. So have a nice day, everyone. I don't know if there's going to be a workshop after this one, or if it's the lunch break.
No. I was about to mention we have a 50 minutes break, another session, and after that we have the networking and the lunch. So
okay.
see you around.
See you around, everyone.